Join me as we break down the easiest and the toughest wide receiver cornerback matchups you need to know for week 8 of fantasy football. And last week, this list proved invaluable with players like Kendrick Bourne, players like DK Metcalf, players like Jameson Williams, who had hard matchups, absolutely letting us down, and players like Ladd McConkey, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, and Kayshon Boutte, who had easy matchups, crushing it for fantasy football. This is the type of information you just don't see everywhere else, and that we are making every single week. So hit that like and subscribe. Let's jump into the 10th hardest matchup for week 8. We take a look at Jaylen Waddle facing off against AJ Terrell of the Falcons. And unfortunately, this offense is in shambles and facing an extremely difficult matchup this week. AJ Terrell has been shutting everybody down like Kendrick Bourne in week 7. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. With Tua struggling, the extremely difficult matchup, I'm going to bench Waddle this week. Because this is an OBS, we're going to do the 10th easiest and 9th easiest matchups together because his teammates, Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. So both those guys looking for huge weeks against Andrew Phillips and Cordell Flott of the Giants. Now in week 6, the Giants did a pretty good job. That was a game where they dominated. Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, they got a huge win. But look at what the Giants overall have been allowing. I mean, against the Broncos in week 7, big fantasy points to everybody. Week 5 against the Saints, big fantasy points to everybody. Week 4 against the Chargers, big fantasy points. Both of them, lock them into your lineup. With the 9th hardest matchup, we have Chris Olave facing Jacob Parrish of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, last week, Olave was on our easiest matchups. He dropped 26 points. So this week, I would lower your expectations. He has been so good. The target volume has been so high that I think we're still going to start him, but definitely lower your expectations. If you have some other great players, maybe he does go to the bench in some smaller leagues. We have some huge names on this list, but number 8 with the 8th hardest schedule is McMillan. For the second week in a row, he's got a bad matchup because last week he faced Sauce Gardner, 6.3 points. This week he's facing Tre'Davious White of the Bills. So I would say if you benched him last week, you were worried about that matchup. I would bench him again this week and maybe a trade for target after he gets through these difficult matchups. This could be the breakout for Matthew Golden with the 8th easiest matchup for the week facing Jalen Ramsey of the Steelers. You see the Steelers have been extremely weak against wide receivers. We saw that last week when Jamar Chase and T. Higgins went absolutely nuclear. So if you have Matthew Golden, you don't have a lot of good options with the bye week, I would start him this week. And if you don't have him, maybe a good trade for a target. Buy him low before this week. If he pops off, maybe you keep starting him or maybe you try to sell high. Let's do another easy schedule with Michael Pittman Jr. facing Jalen Amore-Davis of the Titans. The main worry here is that they just build such a huge lead that they sit the 4th quarter. That's really the concern here. But with so many touchdowns to go around in this game, most likely for the Colts, you know Tyler Warren's going to eat, you know that Jonathan Taylor's going to eat, but Michael Pittman Jr. is set up with a great matchup and a great start in week 8. We have another no BS moment here with teammates back-to-back on the list, but this time with a difficult schedule. We got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who's been pretty amazing since returning from suspension, facing Dante Jackson and Benjamin St-Juste of the Chargers. Now, I'm not going to waste your time here. I think we're starting both these guys, but I would lower expectations with the difficult matchup. Back over to the easy side of the matchup for the second week in a row, we're going to see Kayshon Boutte facing Tyson Campbell of the Browns. Now, we saw DK Metcalf have a great week against them in week 6. Now, Waddle, he didn't do so good in week 7. There was definitely some problems with Tua, a little bit of problems with the weather as well. But I think Kayshon Boutte, if you add him off the waiver wire, if you got players out on bye, he could be a solid start this week. Another easy matchup for the Colts is Josh Downs facing Roger McCreary of the Titans. This is another player where if you've got players out on bye, I would lock him into lineups. With the 5th hardest matchup, we have Jerry Judy facing Carlton Davis of the Patriots. I think you have to sit him this week, even though you know he's going to see some volume. But with the struggles of this Browns offense and Quinshon Judkins scoring all the touchdowns, the tight end standing out as well, I think you have to bench Judy, but just had to highlight him. He's got the 5th hardest matchup this week. Wandale returns to the hardest matchup list at number 4, facing Cooper DeJean of the Eagles. But we see in week 6, Wandale had a nice game. So I'm not too worried here. If you started him last week, if you've been trusting this guy, if you start him in week 6, I think you can start him again in week 8. Our 4th easiest schedule, before we get to the podium for the hardest and the easiest and some waiver wire guys as well, we've got Ladd McConkey again with the 4th hardest schedule facing Josh Metellus of the Vikings. Last week, we saw the Vikings get destroyed by the Eagles, specifically Josh Metellus. We know AJ Brown had one of the hardest possible schedules last week, but his first touchdown, he scored it on Josh Metellus, not Isaiah Rodgers, his actually difficult matchups. Ladd McConkey, he's got to go in the starting lineup this week. He's been amazing. Do not worry about the number 4 here. Other creators will see number 4 and be like, temper expectations, but when you get the Josh Metellus matchup, that's the person you gotta put in your lineup. The third hardest schedule, and maybe you could say this is the hardest schedule of the week, goes to CeeDee Lamb matched up against Pat Surtain. I know some people say the Cowboys are going to move him around. You know Pat Surtain will probably try to shadow him. He's also going to cover George Pickens some as well. But this defense overall is amazing. But I will say that it's CeeDee Lamb. You're probably going to start him anyway, but I would temper expectations and maybe don't pick him for a DFS lineup. In the bronze medal for the easiest matchup, it's his opponent, Cortland Sutton, facing Trayvon Diggs. We see Dallas has been one of the worst teams. Trayvon Diggs has struggled as well. And Cortland Sutton, by the way, has been absolutely amazing. So with the easy matchup, facing a high-powered Dallas offense, we'll have to see what they can do. We know this Denver defense is amazing as well. But if this game turns into somewhat of a shootout, again, that's why I'm not sitting Lamb, even though he's facing Pat Surtain. I'm definitely not sitting Cortland Sutton either. And it's no surprise to see George Pickens with one of the hardest matchups as well. He comes in ranked at number 2 based on fantasy points allowed, and that is against Riley Moss of the Broncos. Again, he may match up some against Pat Surtain as well. He's someone I may actually consider sitting. With CeeDee Lamb back, Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams dominating in the red zone as well. With a tough matchup, knowing he will face some Pat Surtain as well, I may bench George Pickens if you have other good options. Number 2, with the second easiest matchup, maybe Troy Franklin, a good option as well. But we've got Marvin Mims facing Kaiir Elam of the Cowboys. Another matchup where, hey, if you have players out on bye, if you have players injured, you may want to plug in Marvin Mims and hope for that boom week. The toughest wide receiver matchup, do not wait around for him, is Terry McLaurin facing Noah Williams of the Chiefs. Now, he's been standing out in these games, plus with the Chiefs offense, with Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, the running backs looking a little bit better as well. These teams are struggling because the defense, they know you have to pass. They're always in the pass protect. They are going full speed at the quarterback. This is just a bad situation for the Commanders. Even if Jaden Daniel plays, I think benching Terry McLaurin is a good call. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe to get this video every single week, breaking down the easiest and toughest matchups. This week, our gold medal, our easiest matchup goes to Darnell Mooney. So if you got him off the waiver wire, I would put him in your lineup this week.